Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Skylar Baker-Jordan. I am a left-wing writer, for those of you who are not familiar with me. And today we are going to be reading Chapter 3 of Why Pro-Life? Caring for the Unborn and Their Mothers by Randy Alcorn. For those of you who don't know, I am pro-choice. Randy Alcorn here has written an anti-choice book, and I am going to read Chapter 3 and respond to it as I go along. So, is the unborn really a human being? Chapter 3. That's the title of it. Pro-choice advocates once commonly stated, it's uncertain when human life begins. That's a religious question that cannot be answered by science. And indeed, if you watch the first two videos, I have stated that position in both of them. Most have abandoned this position because it's contradicted by decades of scientific evidence. It is not. That's a lie. However, this out-of-date belief is so deeply ingrained in our national psyche that it's still widely believed. It is not. The only way pro-choice logic can prevail is if people believe the unborn are less than fully human. That is not true. Pro-choice logic can prevail if you decide that the baby is fully human, but that because it depends upon the mother's body in order to survive, and the mother can die in delivery because women still die in childbirth, that the woman must have the ability to consent to allowing that child to gestate within her body. So even if you think that it is a human being, you have to ask yourself, does that child have the right to demand of its mother the ability to use her body in order to survive, even though it could possibly kill her? We do not demand that mothers of living children, so children that are already born and out walking around, give their kidneys to that child. That mother cannot legally be required, as far as I'm aware. If I'm incorrect, you can go ahead and correct me in the comments, and I'll pin your response. But as far as I'm aware, we do not legally require a mother to give a child outside of the womb, so already born, let's say a 10-year-old, her kidney. Now, we might judge her as being, a terrible mother if she doesn't give her 10-year-old child a kidney. I think society would probably be pretty annoyed at that and be like, wow, that's really callous. But we don't legally make her do it, She's not legally required to. Is this on? Yeah, it's on. So, anyway, what science says. That's the first subheading. Dr. Alfred M. I'm going to mess this name up. Bongiani, Dr. B, professor of obstetrics at the University of Pennsylvania, stated, quote, I have learned from my earliest medical education that human life begins at the time of conception. Human life is present throughout this entire sequence from conception to adulthood. Any interruption of any point throughout this time constitutes a termination of human life. All right. I don't know who Dr. B is. His name is Dr. Alfred M. Bongioanni, if you want to look him up and see, sort of what his agenda is. Because just because you quote a professor of obstetrics does not mean that that professor is the A, without agenda, and B, the sole arbiter or last voice on this issue. I have a feeling that a lot of other professors of obstetrics would probably disagree with Dr. B here. Speaking of the early stages of a child's development in the womb, Professor B, okay, so we're calling him Professor B, said, I am no more prepared to say that these early stages represent an incomplete human being than I would be to say that the child prior to the dramatic effects of puberty is not a human being. This is a human life at every stage. Okay, I think I've thoroughly refuted that point before, so we'll move on. Dr. Jerome Lejeune, the genetics professor at the University of Descartes and Paris, stated, after, I guess that's Descartes, probably University of Descartes, isn't it? I don't speak French. After fertilization has taken place, a new human being has come into being. He said this, quote, is no longer a matter of taste or opinion. Each individual has a very neat beginning at conception. Again, if you want to look up Dr. Jerome Lejeune, that's Jerome Lejeune, I would find out what Dr. Lejeune's agenda is, Professor Micheline Matthews Roth of Harvard University Medical School said it is scientifically correct to say an individual human life begins at conception. The moment of each person's creation is the moment of his conception. Before that moment, the individual with his unique DNA did not exist. From that moment, he does exist. Okay, I mean, again, your mileage may vary. I have a feeling that other experts in the field, medical doctors and obstetrics professor and genetics professors would disagree with this, but he's cherry-picked 3 people who agree with him. It's not merely pro-life people who believe this. The owner of Oregon's largest abortion clinic testified under oath. Of course, human life begins at conception. I don't know if that's true. You can check that. Keep in mind, this book came out, I think, in 2004, so that quote might be hard to trace. Oh, there is a footnote here at the end of the book. So let's take a look at that. This is chapter 3, and that's footnote 4. Okay, apparently it was Eileen Klass who said this in Lovejoy Surgery Center versus Advocates for Life Ministries, which was a 1989 court case. So you can look that up and see the quote in proper context. How clear is the proof that human life begins at conception? So clear that the Missouri General Assembly should not be the expert you cite in anything. Okay, the Missouri General Assembly in 2020, I believe it was, the voters of the state of Missouri voted for Medicare expansion, and the legislature in the state of Missouri said, nah, our people want it. The people we represent voted and said yes, they want it, but fuck them. We're not going to do it. So, maybe don't trust the Missouri General Assembly. And also, I don't believe you should be trusting politicians to make medical choices for you anyway. So clear that the Missouri General Assembly overwhelmingly approved a 2003 bill which stated the General Assembly of the state finds that 1, the life of each human being begins at conception. 2, unborn children have protectable interests in life, health, and well-being. The term unborn children or unborn child shall include all unborn child or children of the offspring of human beings from the moment of conception until birth at every stage of biological development. Yeah, I mean, shocking. The Missouri legislature is anti-choice, Again, though, that's not... You can't cite that as evidence that you are correct. That's just evidence that you were able to institutionally capture the state legislature. That's not evidence that your position is the correct one. It's just evidence that your position is the one being forced on people by law. Complex and human. The newly fertilized egg contains a staggering amount of genetic information sufficient to control the individual's growth and development for his entire lifetime. Is that true? I don't know. Don't really care. A single thread of DNA from a human cell contains information equivalent to a library of 1,000 volumes. Cool. The cells of the new individual divide and multiply rapidly, resulting in phenomenal growth. There is growth because there's life. Long before a woman knows she's pregnant, there is within her a living, growing human being. I don't know. I mean, bacteria is also alive, and it's inside of her, so should she not be able to get rid of bacteria? Again, I just don't know if it's trying to kill her. And again, childbirth can kill someone. We need to understand that. I mean, we're about to understand that. We're about to see the consequences of forced birth in this country. And they're going to be horrifying. And they're going to be ghastly. And they're going to be things that we can't turn away from. We're going to see. I hate that we're going to find out, but we're going to find out. Between 5 and 9 days after conception, the new person burrows into the womb's wall for safety and nourishment. Already, his or her gender can be determined by scientific means. Gender here is used as a synonym for sex. By 14, that's a Skylar comment that's not in the text. By 14 days, this is back to the text. By 14 days, the child produces a hormone that suppresses the mother's menstrual period. It will be 2 more weeks before clearly human features are discernible and 3 more weeks before they're obvious. Still, he is a fully fledged member of the human race. Okay. At conception, the unborn doesn't appear human to us who are used to judging humanity by appearance. Nevertheless, in the objective scientific sense, he is every bit as human as any other child or adult. He looks like a human being ought to at his stage of development. At 18 days after the conception, the heart is forming and the eyes start to develop. By 21 days, the heart is pumping blood throughout the body. By 28 days, the unborn has budding arms and legs. By 30 days, she has a brain and has multiplied in size 10,000 times. I mean, that's pretty cool if it's true, but I don't see how any of that has a bearing on abortion. By 35 days, her mouth, ears, and nose are taking shape. At 40 days, the preborn child's brain waves can be recorded, and her heartbeat, which began 3 weeks earlier, can already be detected by an ultrasonic stethoscope. By 42 days, her skeleton is formed, and her brain is controlling the movement of muscles and organs. No matter how he or she looks, a child is a child, and always abortion terminates that child's life. The earliest means to cause abortion, including... I can't pronounce this word, mifepristone, and all abortion pills are too late to avoid taking a life. We'll just keep going. The drama of life is the next subheading. Okay. Famous intrauterine photographer Leonard Nilsson, I had no idea there was an intrauterine photographer who was famous, is best known for his photo essays in Life magazine and his book, A Child is Born. In his drama of life before birth, he says this is the unborn at 45 days after conception, before many women even know they're pregnant. Quote, though the embryo now weighs only 1/30th of an ounce, it has all the internal organs of the adult in various stages of development. It already has a little mouth with lips, an early tongue, and buds for 20 milk teeth. Its sex and reproductive organs have begun to sprout. End quote. By 8 weeks, hands and feet are almost perfectly formed. By 9 weeks, a child will bend fingers around an object placed in the palm. Fingernails are forming, and the child is sucking his thumb. The 9-week baby has already perfected a somersault, backflip, and scissor kick. The unborn responds to stimulus and may already be capable of feeling pain, yet abortions on children at this stage are called, quote, early abortions. Is that true? I don't know. I feel like that's been debunked as a lie, but I can't say that for certain, so I'm going to ignore that point. You can Google it if you want and find more research on whether the baby at this, or the fetus at this stage of development can feel pain. I don't know the answer to that, so I can't confirm or refute it. By 10 weeks, the child squints, swallows, and frowns. By 11 weeks, he urinates, makes a wide variety of facial expressions, and even so he urinates inside of his mom? Is that true? Is that true? Gross. By 12 weeks, the child is kicking, turning his feet, curling and fanning his toes, making a fist, moving thumbs, bending wrists, and opening his mouth. All this happens in the first trimester, the first 3 months of life. In the remaining 6 months of the womb, nothing new develops or begins functioning. The fully intact child only grows and matures unless her life is lost by miscarriage or taken through abortion. It is an indisputable scientific fact that each and every surgical abortion in America stops a beating heart and stops already measurable brain waves. Okay. What do we call it when a person no longer has a heartbeat or brain waves? We call that death. Again, I'm just not sure that any of this matters. From my perspective, and I've said this repeatedly, you can't, asking when life begins, and what makes somebody, qualify as a human being is a philosophical choice. It's not a scientific I don't think science can answer this. And this guy is saying science has answered it definitively, which lets me know that he's full of shit, because I don't think science has answered that definitively one way or the other. I don't think science is on anyone's side when it comes to this question, because I think that, even scientists are going to be in disagreement over what constitutes life. But it doesn't matter, because the bodily autonomy issue has to take precedence. A woman has to be able to consent to allowing her body to go through this. If she doesn't have control over her own body, what does she have? What should we call it when there is a heartbeat and there are brain waves? Life. Every abortion ends a human life. I mean, okay, but you're asking what we should call it. That's what you say we should call it. I don't know that we should call it that. SLED is the next subheading. Scott Klusendorf says, quote, the answer to the question, what is it, trumps all other considerations. I guess what the embryo is. He points out that there are only 4 differences between a preborn and a newborn. They can be remembered through the acronym SLED, which I'll define and briefly summarize. SLED is size, first of all. Does how big you are determine who you are? Level of development. Are 20-year-olds more human than 10-year-olds, since they are smarter and stronger? Environment. Does being outside the house make you more or less of a person than being outside? Does being located in the mother's body rather than outside make a child less human? No, but it does change the circumstances of their rights. I believe that. We'll get into that, I'm sure. Degree of dependency. Does dependence upon another determine who you are? Is someone with Alzheimer's or on kidney dialysis less of a person? Am I an insulin-dependent diabetic less of a person than before I contracted the disease? Well, the answer is, of course, no. But the answer is also that, kidney dialysis does not require me to cut open my body and pull out a kidney, nor do I have to give you my blood sugar or for diabetes or, sacrifice my health for someone with Alzheimer's. And I have to sacrifice some time. And it might be stressful. And Alzheimer's is a terrible disease. But the only person that it could possibly kill is the person with Alzheimer's. A pregnancy could kill the fetus, or the baby, if you want to do that, and the mother. And so I think the mother has to have a say. A 3-month-old is much smaller than a 10-year-old, far less developed, and just as incapable of taking care of himself as an unborn. A 3-month-old, yeah. For some reason, I'm thinking that's a 10-year-old. Okay. The question is not how old or big or smart or inconvenient the unborn are, but who they are. The answer is simple. They are human beings. Okay, that's the end of this chapter. How long is the next chapter? Okay, it's too long, I think, to read in this one. So this video is going to end. But stay tuned, because I will be releasing chapter 4 soon enough. Again, my name is Skylar Baker-Jordan, and you can find me on Twitter at Skylar Jordan, and I post my writing there. But if you want to read along or read ahead even, you can buy this book. It is called Why Pro-Life? Caring for the Unborn and Their Mothers by Randy Alcorn. So, all right, I'll be back with more commentary on this book later on. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.